What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 16 of Politically Charged. Surprise, surprise, still Jack Berland. We're still on the air. I want to start off this episode by saying prayers up for everybody in the path of what was Hurricane Harvey. It's now Tropical Storm Harvey. The images coming out of Dallas, Houston, Texas suburbs is just crazy. That kind of devastation, that kind of rainfall, and it's not done raining yet. It's going to stick around for another couple days. So prayers up to everybody in that area of the country. I hope everybody gets taken care of. Everybody gets out safe and sound. Now, let's get into the week that was in this Trump administration. This great, this competent, this amazing, so much winning in this Trump administration, which actually announced a new, in quotation marks, Afghanistan strategy this past week, last Monday. In actuality, this new strategy is nothing more than a continuation of the old strategy under President Obama. The plan includes such strategies as pressuring the Taliban using our military, while simultaneously pressuring the Pakistani government diplomatically to help bring the Taliban to the table and hopefully help end the violence. Essentially, the big thing to take away from this is that the only difference between this and the Obama administration strategy is that there's an open-ended commitment for our troops compared to Obama's scheduled troop withdrawals. The idea behind open-ended commitment is that the Taliban can't just wait us out and wait for a scheduled date for us to leave. The scheduled troop withdrawal idea is more built around the Afghanistan military, the Afghanistani police have to take into account that we're only there for so long and they need to build up. Otherwise, they can fall into a habit of just kind of relying on us to do everything, which is exactly what we don't want. If you take nothing else away from anything I've said about Afghanistan on this podcast, it's that Trump, with this decision, readily abandoned his public position of withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, something he made extremely, extremely clear during the course of the campaign, to basically just end up copy and pasting the Obama-era strategy for handling Afghanistan. Not really the move for somebody who made his entire political career possible by questioning if Obama was a citizen or not. Seems kind of weird to kind of want to copy him now. But whatever. That's nowhere near the craziest thing that happened this week. Because the Republican Party continued to show how great they are at governing by basically just a bunch of bizarre infighting. Starting on Monday with the Afghanistan speech, which I've already referenced, and with the Grim Reaper back at the helm, Breitbart immediately condemned this policy shift, which, as I said, is really not a policy shift at all. Most of this negative coverage coming from Breitbart was aimed at H.R. McMaster, the Trump National Security Advisor who openly feuded with Steve Bannon, aka the Grim Reaper, who has come under frequent fire from Breitbart, which is, of course, part of the reason Bannon was ousted by the new Chief of Staff, John Kelly. On Tuesday night, at Trump's campaign-style rally in Arizona, Trump managed to criticize both of Arizona's Republican senators for perceived slights, John McCain and Jeff Flake. Same Jeff Flake that kind of wrote a book aimed at Trump's head, and John McCain, war hero and current cancer patient. Hope he gets well soon. Not to be outdone by himself in 1 week, Thursday, President Trump continued his ongoing Twitter beef with Mitch McConnell and everyone's favorite incompetent fool Paul Ryan over their handling of healthcare and the looming debt ceiling fight. Though, to be fair to both of them, nobody with any kind of conscience could have voted for such a draconian healthcare bill, except for those, 48 Republican senators that did. Speaking of the incredibly competent Paul Ryan, wonder kid of the Republican Party, on Monday night, following the Trump Afghanistan policy shift, he held a town hall moderated by Jake Tapper, my favorite CNN political analyst. Well, I guess moderator, but that's neither here nor there, where he said that dozens of counties had no insurance plans available through the ACA marketplace. Of course, the ACA is Obamacare, something a bizarre amount of people haven't yet connected. It was almost as if he was deliberately lying, which is, I know, weird for Republicans to do. The actual amount of counties with no insurance plans? 2. In the entire country. 2 counties, at the time Paul Ryan said that, did not have insurance plans under the Affordable Care Act. Both of those counties received insurance plans within 72 hours of Paul Ryan saying that. So was he lying? I don't know. Was he just deliberately trying to mislead the public? I don't know. Are Republicans ridiculous? Yes. Absolutely, unequivocally, yes. This whole thing kind of put a little tiny dent in the idea that Obamacare is imploding, something Republicans repeatedly and frequently like to mention, even though Trump himself is almost entirely the cause of Obamacare premiums hiking, something that bizarrely Republicans tend to ignore. Now, for the most ridiculous story of the week and just a ridiculous week of news, on Friday, as a Category 4 hurricane was bearing down on Texas, the Trump administration decided to do a news dump. Now, the idea behind a news dump is fairly simple, and it's really a somewhat regular action taken on usually Friday afternoons when most people really kind of stop paying attention to the news. But the Trump administration went just a tiny, tiny bit further, taking advantage of the news coverage surrounding the hurricane to announce that President Trump had pardoned Sheriff Joe Arpaio and that Sebastian Gorka had left the White House, finally. Let's start with Gorka, since he was really more of, well, he really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, and he was more of a comedy source in the Trump administration more than anything else. From his ties to the far right-wing Hungarian groups to his inability to secure a security clearance in a job that kind of required one, to his constant spewing of damn near incoherent nonsense on TV in defense of the Trump administration. It's amazing that Gorka lasted over 7 months. For those that don't know, Sebastian Gorka served as a deputy assistant focused on national security and terrorism to President Trump. His main claim to fame is being a nut job that revved his Mustangs, I guess revved his engine a lot in the White House parking lot, and having a PhD from a university in Hungary that isn't respected at all in the Western world, I guess. Apparently, all that he accomplished in those 7 months was wandering around the West Wing talking to whoever he could and spewing his incoherent nonsense to TV reporters. So he was exactly the kind of character that you would expect the Trump administration to employ at the White House. So overall, he had a wildly successful stint in the White House and is now headed back to Breitbart, surprise, surprise, to reprise his role. The best part of all this is that for 7 months, Seb Gorka managed to block a bunch of people on Twitter, almost all of them liberal, or people that had criticized him in any way, shape, or form, and that he wandered around the White House for 7 months without a security clearance in a job that required one, and was able to keep his job. For 7 months, the man walked around the White House doing nothing but sporadically appearing on TV, spewing, like I said, completely incoherent nonsense in an extremely odd way, but wasn't fired. He managed to hide behind Steve Bannon for 7 months, and now that Steve Bannon is gone, Seb Gorka has been forced out of his role. Thank God. I mean, the man is completely useless as it is, but he had the ear of the president against all odds. So I don't know what else to say about the man other than that he was a complete joke, and I'm glad that he's gone from the White House. Now I want to move on to Trump's pardon of the infamously anti-immigrant Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Convicted in this past July for his aggressive immigration policy enforcement, which is generously called just racist, which included housing people in what he called tent cities and voluntarily giving reporters tours of these tent cities and making them get close-ins on the people that were there, allowing his deputies to stop anyone if they suspected they were an illegal immigrant, which he eventually got in trouble for, and holding suspected immigrants in jail when they would have otherwise been released against their will. Arpaio made a name for himself as America's toughest mayor, a nickname he came up with himself, and as we all know, nicknames you come up with yourself always stick and are always true. During his time in office, he was put under investigation by the Obama administration for racial profiling, which ultimately resulted in him being charged with criminal contempt for failing to follow a judge's order, followed by his conviction on that charge. Now, the judge ordered him to stop racial profiling? He did not. Trump's pardon of Ohio sets a dangerous precedent by saying, simply follow my rhetoric and you don't have anything to worry about with the courts. Holding someone after they'd otherwise done everything required to be released in order to allow ICE to pick them up is a direct violation of the Fourth Amendment. Doing this would allow local sheriffs to be held liable in civil court, potentially resulting in millions and millions of dollars of payment. But truthfully, in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter. That's not the big issue here. It's morally ridiculous. It's asinine for somebody who racially profiled thousands and thousands of people and then violated their rights whenever he possibly could. He rose to fame off racially profiling thousands and thousands and thousands of people and taking away their rights. Sheriff Joe Arpaio is a racist, a criminal, and in no way deserved ever being considered for a pardon. It's absolutely disgusting that the Trump administration attempted to hide this behind a Category 4 hurricane bearing down on Texas that has since produced catastrophic rain to avoid the negative news coverage they knew and deserve that would come from pardoning him. Once again, the true colors of the Trump administration were shown, and to the surprise of absolutely no one, the way they shone through was undeniably racist. I talked a little bit last week about how I was kind of tired of moderating myself. Well, saying I talked a little bit about it is a little bit of a stretch. I talked for about 6 minutes about it. But damn, man. How could you possibly, even if you are a Republican, even if you have been indoctrinated by Fox News, or what Fox News calls news, how do you see this as good? If you really are a constitutionalist and you're hell-bent on maintaining the Second Amendment, how can you support somebody who's directly violating one of the other amendments? I don't understand how people can rise to this man's defense, how the president of the freaking United States can rise to this man's defense. Not only did he not follow a judge's orders, something that these rule of law Republicans should be completely against, he was convicted of it. He had not been sentenced yet, but he was convicted. Trump has basically said to all those sheriffs out there, and the good sheriffs, the sheriffs that follow the law, that treat everybody with respect, infinitely outweigh those like Sheriff Joe Arpaio. But for those few that don't, for those in that position that hold an immense amount of power, the people in their districts, in their counties, in their cities are under fire now. Because they can act in whichever way they see fit, and this administration is going to bail them out simply because they're following Trump's rhetoric. Or maybe they support Trump. Either way, it doesn't matter. The idea that this can happen and that this type of person who did these type of things can be pardoned for it is ridiculous. And it should make everybody in that administration ashamed of themselves. I'm tired of reading these stories about people saying, oh, we're trying to change the administration from the inside out. We can't do as much good from the outside as we can from inside. That's a bunch of crap. Don't believe anybody that says that. If you really cared so much about how ridiculous this administration seems and how racist, among other things, they are, then you would leave. If you're involved in a group of people that you really don't like, that you don't like what they stand for, you don't like how they talk, you don't like how they try to push their views on everybody, you leave. You don't stay and say, oh, I'm fighting for the common good. I'm trying to do our work from the inside. That's a bunch of crap. You just want to protect yourself. And I'm tired of reading stories about these Republicans that are doing that. If you really are sick and tired of the way the Trump administration is behaving, and you should be, then you leave the administration. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just what you do. At some point, somebody has to stand up for their morals. And at this point, it doesn't seem like any Republicans are willing to do so. So, once again, ending this episode on a positive, uplifting note. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. As always, make sure to check us out on politicallycharged.us, politicallycharged.us, not .com. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff. Keep an eye out for new episodes every Monday morning, sometimes Thursdays. It depends how much work I have while I'm at school. And with that, we out.